Hello, this is Adrienne Berg, and this is The Ageless Traveler. Did you recognize that sound? It is the sound of heavy boots. These are guys actually taking a trip. What's so exciting about that? Well, I discovered something. 63% of women who travel solo are married. And I wanted to see why they're not traveling with their husbands anymore. Well, there are a lot of reasons, but one of them is that not every guy wants to travel, even though they may be retired, even though they may have the money, and even though they may have the time. So we started something called Travel Bros, and we have had inspirational folks who are men, are traveling. And now we're going to have somebody who is in the business of travel. And he's also a travel bro, been all around the world. His name is Peter Anderson. He's a great friend of mine. We've partnered on many, many occasions. He is the creator and the CEO of Anderson and Associates, consultant to the tourism industry. He's also a professor. He teaches hotel management, and he knows everything about spas you'd ever want to know. He's a great person to ask questions to in our voicemail. Please take a look at our show notes because you'll see exactly how you can send a voicemail or a text and get answers to your questions from all of our experts, including Peter. But now let's take a look at this aspect of Travel Bro. So thank you for being with me today, Peter. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Delighted to be here, Adrienne.
Well, let me delve into some personal stuff. The way you travel is the way many men travel, and that is business travel. I've been a business traveler all my life, so women do the same. And one of the things that veteran travelers love to do, I call it sneaking away, but it's not really sneaking away, is going on a pre or post trip tour. And you've done that many times. So first, let's ask you, what's been your favorite? What something that you never would have seen if you didn't travel for business?
That's a hard one because there's been a lot.
Right? Yeah.
But I would probably say the wine country of southern Australia around Melbourne.
Right. Right.
And it's one of those things that I've done work in the Melbourne region. And the challenge with traveling for work is it's very strategic and it's very focused. You come in, you do your work, and you leave.
Right.
So if you're lucky enough to be able to carve a few days on either side, that's where you really get to understand the richness of the environment. And there was one time I was doing a project down there, and I carved out a little time and went to a hot mineral springs right on the peninsula, like on the bay of Melbourne, and there was lots and lots of vineyards around. And it was the tail wagging the dog. It was all of a sudden, this was the highlight of the trip, and the business was just sort of a side note to the whole thing.
Well, now we want to get guys out there and traveling. So let's take a look at that aspect of it. Let's say they are already traveling for business. You talk a lot about the value of learning the culture around you so that you can actually be better in business if you're traveling. Explain what you mean about that.
Well, every region, including the one you live in, has certain things that we take for granted. And probably the easiest example is I spent a fair bit of time in both Japan and Germany. And in those areas, punctuality is next to godliness.
Got
You
it.
would never be 10 minutes late for anything in either of those societies. So you plan on getting lost time and you plan on what could go wrong time because you arrive 15 minutes early because you might as well not even go to the meeting if you arrive 5 minutes late. So the culture gives some insight not only to the punctuality issues, but also to the preciseness of the people. So you want to be armed with facts and specific figures and empirical data as opposed to trends unless they're supported by data because the window about punctuality told me a whole lot about how the cultures think and where they give you credibility, where they become receptive. And so that was one area.
Yeah, so what we're trying to say here is that on the motivational scale, and you're traveling for business, it really behooves you to take a look around and
Absolutely.
see what's going on in that culture. You'll have greater cultural competency. That's true of women and men, but since we're trying to motivate guys, so one thing is it helps your bottom line to travel. Now, and by the way, if you do have a family member like a spouse or a partner, you can take them with you. Many good conferences actually have special events for your partners. And then you've been involved with some of those too and created some of those. Tell us about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your partner can give you insight to the context, but especially if you're doing a long haul flight, you want to be able to justify the 12 hours on the plane. And so having a spouse or a partner or having somebody else who comes with you, they don't want to sit in a hotel room,
You
or
bet.
if it's not what they're interested, and quite frankly, anybody can lie by a pool anywhere in the world.
Right.
So if you're going to be traveling and taking advantage of the destination is a great way to justify the cost, the time, and you go away with a richness that you wouldn't have, you know. So I highly recommend it, and I think that your partners can also give you some insight as to how a society works.
For sure. So we've been talking about business travel. We've been talking about business bros, but now let's talk about real travel bros. We're going to take a little bit of a break and tell you a couple of things about where you can travel with the Ageless Traveler. When we come back, we're going to talk about straight up leisure travel. What's out there for guys that would entice them to travel on their own, with their partners, or with their buddies. We'll be right back. What are you doing between March 29th and April 12th, 2025? Are you going on safari? Well, we are. Please come with us on our very first Ageless Traveler trip. I will make sure that you see everything that's on your bucket list. We're going with the very famous Colette Tours, one of the oldest tour operators in the United States. They know us, they respect us, and they provide for us everything that we need. Yes, we are going to Kenya. We will see the city of Nairobi. We're going to the Serengeti. We will see the Big Five. We will also have adventures of a lifetime. If you have been studying safari, or even if you have gone on many safaris, this is something really different. So, how do you find out about it and get your special discounts because you're an ageless traveler? Very simple. Go to agelesstraveler.com. That's our website, agelesstraveler.com. Take a look at featured trips. Get the details by clicking right there. You can do everything from inquire, get your question answered, to book right away so that you're going with us. It is a terrific, terrific tour. And by the way, you can also go to the Masai Mara on an optional pre-trip tour. There's a lot more to it than that because there's yet more opportunity if you have longed to trek with the gorillas in Uganda. Yep, we can make that happen too. So please take a look at agelesstraveler.com, featured travel, and go on safari with us. And now we're back again, and we're here with Peter Anderson, a longtime buddy of mine, a great world traveler, and somebody who's a consultant to the travel industry. Now, Peter, by and large, your Anderson and Associates Consulting has been with spas and hotels. So let's start with exactly that. Is there a trend? I see, and the reason I'm doing this topic, Travel Bros, is I see a tremendous trend toward catering to women. Everything from safety to solo travel to group travel to the camaraderie that women love to have, retreats, self-exploration, lots of femme stuff. Anything like that for men, whether it's hotels, trips, or spas?
Well, that's a great question, Adrian. And I would say we're getting more of that in the terms of wellness and in terms of wellness travel. And what that really is going to a place for exploration. Sometimes there are destinations that actually have wellness components, or the whole destination is built around wellness. And the cornerstones of your day are hiking, good nutrition, great massages, learning how to take better care of yourself. And men are a little bit late to the party in that regard. I mean, the classic dynamic is that a woman will go with her girlfriend.
Yeah.
She will then bring her boyfriend or husband along, and then they will incorporate either their business or their buddies into the travel. So, but you're right, it does start with the female perspective. I think women are a little more curious than men by and large, but men are starting to realize that there are health benefits, there are great ways to clear your mind. There is a curiosity there that men embrace travel. There's another thing about kind of the male ego that men like to do things to brag about them. That
Uh-huh. Something
there
that
is
you
that.
can compete on, yes.
Yes.
Competition.
So whether we want to get snarky and call it hypermasculinity, or you just want to say, well, I'm going to go to this place because I got to hike a mountain or ski one, but there's the inherent bragging rights. But in order to get there, you have to have the experience. So slowly the male traveler is kind of being wooed into travel. I wouldn't say for the wrong reason, but for a different reason than what female travelers historically do. And at the end, the means justify the end, because it was pretty amazing that what we get to experience, in spite of ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's fun to listen to guys that travel because I walk a lot and I'm in walking and hiking groups. And many of them are in really tough hiking groups where they will go up very high mountains and so on together as a group. But what you will hear is there are 40 peaks. I made 37 of them. So they get a badge, and then there's badges everywhere. So they have a badge that I hiked, Kilimanjaro, and the women are talking about we met such wonderful people on Kilimanjaro. Who knew it was such a great, So it goes like that. But now we'll go personal for you in terms of the wellness trips, because you really have not only gone on them, you've created some of them.
I have.
Yeah, and you've also gone to many, many wellness and global wellness conferences and been a speaker. So, what's impressing you right now in terms of wellness for men that require them to go to a spa, to travel, a destination? What's been impressive to you?
I think what's impressive is the fact that it's becoming more and more comprehensive. That, for instance, you don't go just to hike up mountains, you don't go just for incredible vegan cuisine, but you kind of go for the experience, and it shows up in the food and beverage. It shows up in the full spectrum lighting in your guest room so that you get over jet lag more easily. It shows up in the kind of recreation you get to do, whether it's swimming or trainers at the gym, at the fitness facility, but it's not a one size fits all, and it hits you from a bunch of different directions. So what I love about these trends in wellness is that you're not going to a destination in order to have an experience. Well, I mean, you have that, but you go to the destination to also learn,
And take
and
something home.
and
Yeah.
you take it home. So whether it's half a dozen cooking classes, or a way to enhance your workouts, all of a sudden you're having that travel experience in your staycation on the weekends, while you're working. So I'm finding that the industry is giving value. Now, no, what's it?
Different kind of
Giving
value.
value to the consumers. The great thing is, so you're not spending $10,000 to go away for a week to have an experience. You're investing $10,000 in tuition to not only have the experience, but to enrich your life when you leave that experience.
Yeah, I think that there's a good discussion we could have as a panel. We ought to do this, which is psychologically, there are people who are travelers like me who really go to see something. It's purely curiosity. I want to know what that looks like. And I want to know what everything looks like in the whole world if I can. So I keep traveling, I keep sightseeing. But then there are people who have to have a different kind of value to their trip. They don't so much enjoy getting there and even being there. They want to do what you're talking about, which is take something home. And that appeals to a lot of men. Now, let me switch gears completely on this one. Oh, I did want to ask you, we had talked about cryonics, as a new thing in wellness where people actually go and get frozen for a couple of minutes and then they come back out.
Mhm.
When I last time I went to a world-class spa that had that, I saw many more men doing that than women. So is that one of the new, let's say, protocols that are available that seem to be more popular with men? You know,
It's interesting because the hot cold, I mean, basically the physiology behind it is that your blood vessels constrict. It increases blood flow. You get a sense of well-being. And they've been doing that with Knipe therapy and spas for 200 years. So this is a new variation of that. Now, whether it's more subscribed by men than by women, I really don't know. I mean, I am seeing ice baths. This is the next generation of ice baths. And more spas have that have the cold areas where you sit in for 2 or 3 minutes and whatnot. And there are devotees that have these tubs at home and they do them when they're not on vacation.
right,
Although I know of nobody that has a cryo booth in, for residential use, just for costs and upkeep. But I think it's a little more daring. It goes back to the bragging rights. But
right.
I also think there's a machismo factor, which may make it subscribe it more to men than women. And quite frankly, I've done it once, and I did it in one of the chambers where your head is sticking out of a nitrogen bath, for lack of a better word,
Right.
and the temperature goes down to 256 degrees Fahrenheit. You're in there for 3 minutes. I think the experience would have been stronger if it was actually the phone booth type where your whole body is in there. It's a little scary, and I that might in terms of, will I be too cold? Will something freeze? But it's I've seen more men do it than women for that very reason, but I've seen more women in ice baths.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Well, when we come back, I want to talk about something else, which is what is now called skip generation. Skip generation being that the older adult taking a younger person, usually their grandchildren, with them.
Mhm.
And now it's getting to the point that they call it grandmother travel, but it really should be grandparent travel. And we'll talk about how you would position what you're offering to men to be enticing for them to take the young kids that call them pop-up, to on a skip generation trip. We'll be right back. If you take long trips or travel through different climate zones the way I do, you don't want to schlep a lot of luggage. Well, luggage free ships to many of the hotels in the world and mostly all the cruise ships. I've been recommending luggage free for years to my friends and family, and I always hear the best rave reviews. So you visit agelesstraveler.com products and services to access luggage free, get all the information, and stop schlepping. And now we're here again, and we're talking again with Peter Anderson. I've introduced him a couple of times, but there's a couple of things I didn't tell you about him. One of them is that he is one of our advisors to ageless tourism. And ageless tourism really is to quash any kind of ageism in the tourist industry, to educate, to keep the tourism industry more aware of the mature traveler like us, so that they can better serve them, retain them, and attract them in the first place. And one of that huge group of older folks that love to travel are women, and they're being catered to hand over fist. But what about the guides? And that's what this show is about. The second thing you should know about Peter is he's also one of the advisors to this very show, Ageless Traveler, and the things that we should be covering. So I'm very, very proud to have you meet him personally. All right, so let's go back, Peter. It wasn't very long ago that the term skip generation was coined. They used to call it intergenerational travel, meaning families going together. But there's a big difference because it was that the younger generation took grandma, maybe even paid for grandma to go on the trip. Maybe it was once in a lifetime, we're going to bring grandma back to where she was born or where her people came from. Now it's just the opposite. Grandma's paying, grandma picked the trip, and grandma's taking the grandchildren. Sometimes the middle generation, the parents aren't even there, which is why they call it skip from intergeneration. Well, what about the guys? We go back to what about the guys? You always see, Grandpa on the fishing trip or that kind of thing. So is that where it's going? Sports trip. I must admit to you that my husband took our son to several sports trips, but our male grandchild is only 2 years old, so he's too little yet. We'll see what happens. But what's going on there, if anything, or is it just crickets?
Right now, it's more crickets, especially focusing on grandpa taking the kids. I see more intergenerational travel than I do skip generation travel.
Hmm.
There's probably two things that if I were devising a skip generation travel program that I would want to focus on is it has to be fun.
Yes.
That children, well, we may all be guilty of this to a point, but when you're having a good time, you don't want to feel as if it's something you have to do, but what you want to do. And
No.
so there's a lot of ways to capitalize on being out of your environment where there's a sense of awe and wonder, and you get the geography and the history and the culture and the cuisine, and it's all kind of seamlessly rolled into the day's experience. So the other thing is that there's limitations for both the over 70 and the under 10 demographic. And so I would say be kind to yourselves that you don't want to push children too hard or yourself too hard. And so it may require a modified or a more flexible schedule. It may be only hiking halfway up the mountain or go hiking up the bunny hill as opposed to the mountain, but hanging on to the essence of why you're traveling and getting out of that male mindset of bragging rights and machismo about, well, we did all these things. And I think that would create a very successful experience for both sets of bookends.
So when we come back, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back to our last segment and we're going to talk about what I consider personally one of the most important things about travel. And I want to get Peter's take on this and whether or not there's any gender difference in preferences, and that's food and drink. Don't you go anywhere. And we are back. We're back for our last segment. And before we dive into one of the biggest trends in travel, which is culinary travel, going someplace specifically for eating and drinking. You already heard, if you listen to the beginning of the show, that of all the places that Peter enjoyed on a business trip, it was wine country. It was Australian wine country. Well, I don't think he just looked at the grapes. So, so we're going to talk about that. So I do want to remind you that we have a lot to offer. We have, and you'll see this all in the show notes with all the links, a free book, which is called Luxury Travel for Less. If money is stopping you from traveling and you are like me, you like a really good mattress. And if you're a caregiver and that's been stopping you, or you need to travel with your loved one and you're just worrying that it's going to be more of an anxiety trip than a leisure trip, we help you with a free book, Caregiver's Travel Guide. And of course, if you are in this position where you want to meet the people who travel like-minded people and get discounts, please go ahead and join our Facebook salon. And we don't call it a group, we call it a salon because you can share with each other so much. So let's go back now. So culinary travel, we talk about skip travel, which is skip generation, big trend. Another big trend is, and you mentioned it, take some cooking lessons. People do that. They go all over the world, particularly Mexico and Italy, or spas, have wellness experiences to learn to cook. They also go to wine countries and they go to distilleries. It seems to me that this may be a man's thing as well as a woman's thing. That this might be the inroad. What do you have to say about those kinds of trips and the male traveler?
Well, it's hard to have a negative opinion about good food.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I think the cuisine gives you so much of a window into the place. Years ago, I took a trip to Crete,
Yes.
and quite frankly, the whole idea of and this was when farm to table was just starting to become a bit of a buzzword in America. Well, nobody called it farm to table; they just called it restaurants over there.
Right.
And there were probably went to 25 restaurants in the week that I was there, and all the restaurants had the same food, more or less.
Yeah.
But it's because you were eating seasonally. It was the summertime, it was August, and most of the food was grown locally. So there was no big hype about, well, this is what we're doing for you. This is just how we have lived for the last 5,000 years, and you're here for a week enjoying it. So the whole idea of cuisine as a hook gives you insight to so much of the climate, the topography, the farming, the livestock, the plant-based versus animal-based diets. So you, by osmosis, by eating this wonderful, fresh, gorgeous food, you kind of learn about more than you bargain for. It's not just about what the rack of lamb costs or whatnot, but it's why is there no mint jelly? It's because they don't do that. They, and so consequently, I think cuisine is a great way to showcase an environment.
Now let's take a look at hotels with regard to that, because you teach hotel management. Are you seeing changes in menus and the
I
offering
am.
of hotels?
I am. I'm seeing a lot more flexibility in menus. I mean, I can remember and well, not only just the flexibility, but innovation, especially at the higher end, because we are a global community, and with the internet, I mean, any chef in any location can be mindful of trends that other people may be interested in. Now, having said that, if you're going to go to Lapland, you probably want to try reindeer if you eat meat.
Excuse me, I have
Yeah.
been to Lapland.
Did you
And,
try reindeer?
well, no, because I don't eat meat. So,
Ah,
so let me tell you what happened. Very quick story. First of all, Lapland, I was told, is Summitland, not
right,
Lapland. So that's number one. Number two, you can go to Lapland or Summitland either from Sweden or Finland. I did
right.
it from Sweden. And what they do, and it's the most amazing experience of a lifetime, talk about generation. I took my daughter, and she must have been about 10 years old at the time. You actually fly in, small plane, in my case, from Stockholm, and they really put furs on you. I mean, really put furs on you. And they throw you into a sled, and you go through the tundra with dogs to, in that time, the ice hotel. And
Hmm.
that is far enough away, but you don't stop there. You sleep there, but you have to take snowmobiles into Lapland, where you can stay in a tent, where you can go around with the nomadic folks. They all look like Vikings. They're beautiful men, I must say. And then I spilled the beans that I don't eat reindeer. Oh, I thought this was going to be a disaster. No. One bread after another started to come out. Vegetables, very little, but a lot of grain products, a lot of carb products, and it was a lot of really good food. So you can be who you are. Believe me, if you can be who you are in Summitland, this is a while ago, before all the trends, you can be who you are anyway and never be afraid to go. Okay, so let's go back to this issue with the hotels and all this. I am seeing a trend. A friend of mine, we go as two couples together a lot to local restaurants. And just today, she sent me an email, the next restaurant she wants to go to, and it's in a hotel. I find that an interesting breakthrough because very rarely do you pick a hotel for a couple of couples to go for an interesting restaurant. So this trend you say is happening in the high end restaurants?
Well, the customization is happening at the high end, but hotels, especially hotels in markets where there is a certain level of seasonality, where you have your low season, hoteliers are smart enough to realize that if they don't court the local population, if they're only trying to have their restaurants full with tourists and people that are sleeping in their hotel, come low season, they're going to get a an intercept, a segment of only their hotel guests, which may make it difficult to keep the restaurants open. So opening them up and making them attractive to locals is good business. And historically, restaurants are always put in the back of hotels.
Right.
because it was looked at as almost a private club for the guests.
Mhm.
And even from an architecture and design perspective, many of the newer hotels have their restaurants in the lobby or just off the lobby to make it easier for people coming off the street, whether they're local or tourists staying in other hotels.
Right.
Or, so the trend is, yes, we're open for business, and anybody that is interested should stop in and check us out.
So notice that. I noticed it in Palm Springs, which is a real resort area, of course, that almost all the hotels now have outside tables, and before you even get in, you see the tables. In fact, I was in Nice in September, and when we went to our hotel, we couldn't find the entrance. We thought it was the restaurant, and we didn't want to go through the restaurant. The restaurant was so prominent in this hotel that it took the place of the registration area as you got in. You actually walked through the restaurant. It was a good hotel to register. So yes, I see exactly what you're saying. I'm connecting it.
And a lot of that also is tied to technology that you can check somebody in. I had a similar experience in Bangkok where the front desk was actually the host stand or the hostess stand at the restaurant.
Mm.
And when I got to my hotel, the it wasn't fancy enough to have a maitre d', but functionary position, they just took me over to the side. We sat down on a sofa and they checked me in on a pad,
Right.
which you couldn't have done 20 years ago or even 10.
So we are going to stop here, but I'm wondering, I'm telling you what's going on in Nice, and Peter's telling you what's going on in Bangkok, and we're talking about all these things. And if you're saying, hey, you know what? I'd like to do that. I'd like to be able to say just offhandedly, yes, the last time that I was in Lapland, I had a lovely piece of bread. You can. That's what this show is all about. It is lifelong travel made easy. And I thank you so much, Peter. And I want to say to everybody listening, never stop traveling.